Happy hunting season, everybody out there. Hopefully you guys are harvesting some animals for your family. We're going to be covering some trigger control fundamentals, how trigger control and natural point of aim correlate with each other, and how important trigger control is. So the main things that we're going to be covering are the trigger squeeze, follow through, and the reset, what they are and why they're important. So hopefully you guys enjoy this video. Please like and subscribe so this video can reach more people. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, first thing we're going to cover is why is trigger control important? Okay, especially at longer ranges. The reason that it's important, especially at longer ranges, is by the way, this weapon is 100% empty. Ammunition is out, off to the side. We're going to be doing a little bit of dry fire practice. But the reason why trigger control is important is because when you're on your weapon, any sort of movement, especially at longer ranges, is going to be amplified. So if you move this rifle just very, very slightly from left to right, up or down, and you're aiming at a target, you're actually going to be able to see that movement in the reticle, and it's going to affect your shot placement. So it's highly important to have very consistent, even pressure on the trigger at all times. So this is something that you need to practice consistently. If you don't practice this, you can lose it. Okay, and the other thing is that it's very difficult to get good at this, because naturally your brain is anticipating an explosion happening in front of your face, and it wants to jerk the trigger to get that explosion over with. But you have to force yourself to slowly press that trigger and let that explosion or the rifle going off be a surprise. Okay, so you'll see a lot of competition shooters have a very, very light trigger. So we have less input on the rifle during our shot process. With heavier triggers, it's a little bit more difficult to get a good trigger squeeze every single time. I'm sure if you guys have shot pistols, it's pretty easy to jerk that trigger, okay? Because usually those pistol triggers are around 4 to 5 pounds. So, but with rifles, usually those are anywhere between from the factory, probably 3.5 to 2.5 pounds. This one right here is it's a Trigger Tech Diamond, and I have it set all the way down to 8 ounces. So it is and I'll show you guys right here, it's a very, very, very light trigger squeeze. Okay, so all my fundamentals are in place before I actually put my finger on the trigger. But let's go ahead and dive down into what it actually looks like. What does it look like for the trigger squeeze, the follow through, and the reset? And reset really isn't going to happen on a bolt gun or anything. It'll happen like on an AR-15 or a pistol, where the trigger will automatically reset, meaning once I pull that trigger and let it release, it'll click, meaning the trigger has reset. Doing that mitigates from you having to take the slack out of the trigger. With a bolt gun, it doesn't work that way. So with the reset, we're going to call this the reset. So pull the trigger, weapon fires, this is the reset. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to give you guys a different view so you guys can see exactly what I'm doing down here. All right guys, so when you're addressing the trigger with your finger, you don't want to over grip it and end up like this, because when you're pulling that trigger and you're over gripped on it, you're pulling back, first off, you can't get a 90-degree trigger squeeze, but you're actually pulling this trigger back and to the right, which could push your reticle to the left. Okay, and it's the opposite if you under grip it. When you're pulling back, you're actually pushing the trigger back and to the left, which pushes your reticle to the right. Okay, so you need to find the perfect spot to place your finger, and I find that to be right on the pad of my finger. Okay, and I do a 90-degree trigger squeeze. Okay, 90-degree trigger squeeze meaning I'm using that first knuckle closest to my palm to hinge my trigger squeeze. So, and then when you guys are doing this, I want you to think about drawing a line in the sand with your finger. Okay, that's just a nice slow drawing the line in the sand. Okay, so this is what it's going to look like. After that shot goes, I'm going to be holding that trigger to the rear until I see where my bullet went. Okay, then I'm going to reset. Okay, so this is the trigger squeeze. Follow through, okay, is watching your bullet land and holding that trigger to the rear, all right, because you're completing that process. Once you see where your bullet landed and you need to make an adjustment, that's when you reset. Okay, so let's do this again. Finger pad on trigger, it's nice and perfect right where I want it. And I'm gonna see, this is a really light trigger, it's an 8-ounce trigger. It's difficult for you guys to see, there's no creep. So, pulling to the rear, boom, shot goes. Holding it to the rear, seeing where my bullet lands. Okay, then reset. Squeeze, 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 boom. Okay, see where my bullet lands, then I release the trigger, and then you're set to go. So that's going to be a proper trigger squeeze. So pad placement, follow through, and reset. Pad placement, follow through, and reset with a 90-degree trigger squeeze in there. Okay, I'm going to show you guys what slapping the trigger looks like in the scope, and then a proper trigger squeeze in the scope, so you guys can see what it actually does. All right, I'm gonna load up a mag, and you guys are gonna see what slapping the trigger looks like. It's gonna be hard for me to actually do, and what proper trigger control looks like. Okay, so on my target, I'm shooting a target at 675, around in the chamber. Leveling my scope. Okay, I'm gonna do a proper trigger squeeze. Impact, reset. Now I'm gonna jerk the trigger. Okay, I still had an impact. All right. But you can obviously see the difference here, what it looks like, okay? So let's do a proper trigger squeeze again. That was a miss off the right, the wind picked up. Okay. And let's jerk the trigger. And that was a miss off the left, the wind died down. Also, this trigger set at 8 ounces, guys, so it's gonna have minimal, it's gonna minimize the effect of jerking the trigger just because it's such a light trigger. If you had a 3-pound trigger and you were jerking it, you would definitely be able to tell. But I'll show you what this kind of looks like. Magazine is out, okay? Weapon is empty. I'm gonna do a dry fire to show you guys in the reticle what the two look like, so you can kind of see, okay? I'm gonna aim at this target so you could take a look. This is what a proper trigger squeeze looks like. Reticle didn't move. Okay, let's do a slap the trigger. Okay, it moved a little bit down and left about a 1/2 tenth. Slap the trigger again. See how it moved? And then let's do a proper trigger squeeze. Didn't move. Slap the trigger again. Okay. It's a good rifle to shoulder connection, so I'm not getting much movement in the light trigger. All right. Well, Hope you guys got a little bit of something out of that video. Like I said, trigger control is highly important. It's difficult to actually kind of show what it looks like with a high quality trigger that's only 8 ounces. I should have brought out a different rifle for you guys to see, like a factory rifle. You guys would definitely be able to tell the movement. I could see the movement in my scope. It only moves about 1/10 or so, but with such a light trigger, it's kind of difficult to show that. Yeah, the important thing is 90-degree trigger squeeze, pad placement, follow through, and reset. So practice those at home, do a bunch of dry firing. I guarantee you that your shooting is going to improve if your trigger control is proper. It's just one less thing to take out of the long line of issues with missing targets at distance. So, but yeah, guys, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe so that way my videos can reach more people. Very much appreciated, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.